I've been sitting in my car for 3 hours. My wife thinks I'm asleep. My daughter thinks I have the answers. And the church I've served my entire life just told me I've been lied to. It started with one question, 5 words from my 14-year-old. And now, everything I've ever believed is collapsing in real time. But let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here. My name is David Peterson. I'm 42 years old, born and raised in Provo, Utah, 5th-generation Latter-day Saint. My great-great-grandfather crossed the plains with Brigham Young. I served a mission in São Paulo, Brazil. Got home, married Linda in the Salt Lake Temple 3 months later. We've been married 18 years, 3 kids, Emma, 14, Caleb, 11, and Sophie, 7, all born in the covenant, all being raised the way I was raised, with family scripture study, family home evening, seminary, youth conferences, temple trips, the whole package. I've been a member of the Bishopric for 2 years, first counselor. People in the ward call me when they have questions about doctrine. I'm the guy who always has an answer, the steady one, the believer. I've never missed a tithing payment, never broken the word of wisdom, never even watched an R-rated movie. My testimony has been the foundation of everything. My marriage, my parenting, my career, my friendships, my entire identity. I know the church is true the way I know my own name. Or at least I did. It was a Tuesday night, October 15th. Fall in Utah, which means the mountains are on fire with color and the air has that crisp bite that makes you feel alive. We were doing what we do every Tuesday, family home evening. Linda had made hot chocolate. The kids were scattered around the living room coffee table. Caleb was half paying attention, doodling in his scripture journal. Sophie was snuggled up next to Linda, fighting sleep. And Emma, my oldest, my serious one, was actually engaged. She's been like that lately, asking real questions, wanting real answers. She's in seminary now, studying church history, and I've been so proud of her. My little scholar. We were reading Doctrine and Covenants, section 132, the revelation on plural marriage. I was leading the discussion, doing my best to explain the principle in a way that wouldn't freak them out. It's always been a tricky topic, polygamy. Even in Utah, even in the heart of Mormondom, it makes people uncomfortable. But I've always approached it the way I was taught, with faith. God commanded it for a season. Joseph obeyed. It was difficult but necessary. And now it's over, and we don't practice it. And that's that. Emma was reading out loud. Verse 61, her voice clear and steady. And again, as pertaining to the law of the priesthood, if any man espouse a virgin and desire to espouse another, and the first give her consent, and if he espouse the second, and they are virgins, and have vowed to no other man, then is he justified. He cannot commit adultery, for they are given unto him. For he cannot commit adultery with that belongeth unto him and to no one else. She stopped, looked up at me. And I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Confusion mixed with something else. Doubt, maybe, or discomfort. Dad, she said, her voice quiet. Did Joseph Smith really marry a 14-year-old? The room went still. Caleb stopped doodling. Linda's hand froze mid-reach for her mug. Sophie, half asleep, didn't notice. But I noticed everything. The way Emma's eyes were locked on mine. The way Linda's expression shifted from neutral to concerned in half a second. The way my heart suddenly felt like it was beating too fast and too slow at the same time. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. My brain was scrambling. Where did she hear that? Did someone at seminary say something? Did she see something online? And more importantly, what's the right answer? What am I supposed to say? Because here's the thing. I'd heard whispers, footnotes in church history books, vague references in institute classes, but I'd never dug deep. I'd been trained my whole life to trust, to have faith, to not lean on my own understanding. If something felt wrong or confusing, I put it on the shelf. I assumed there was context I didn't have. I assumed the brethren knew more than me. I assumed God had reasons I couldn't comprehend. But now, Sitting across from my 14-year-old daughter, looking into her eyes, eyes that trusted me, eyes that expected truth, I realized something that made my stomach drop. I didn't actually know the answer. I'd always assumed the anti-Mormon websites were lying. The critics, the apostates, the enemies of the church. They twisted things, took things out of context, made mountains out of molehills. That's what I'd been taught. That's what I'd always believed. But sitting there with Emma's question hanging in the air like smoke, I realized I'd never actually checked. I'd never looked it up. I'd just trusted. And now my daughter, the same age as, wait, what was her name? Helen something, was asking me directly, and I had no idea what to say. I started, my voice sounding strange in my own ears. That's a good question, sweetheart. I forced a smile, tried to sound calm, confident. Let me look into it and we'll talk about it, okay? I want to make sure I give you the right answer. Emma nodded slowly, but I could see it in her face. She caught my hesitation. She's sharp, my girl. Too sharp sometimes. She went back to reading, but her voice was quieter now, uncertain. Linda gave me a look across the table. Concern, maybe a little bit of warning, like don't mess this up. I tried to focus on the rest of the lesson, tried to talk about eternal families and the sealing power and the importance of temple covenants. But my mind was somewhere else, somewhere dark and spinning. That question, that simple, 5-word question. It had lodged itself in my chest like a splinter, and every time I breathed, it dug deeper. We finished scripture study, said family prayer. Linda took the kids upstairs to get ready for bed. I stayed downstairs, pretending to clean up the hot chocolate mugs. But really, I was just standing there, staring at the Doctrine and Covenants still open on the coffee table. Section 132. The revelation that Joseph said came from God. Plural marriage. 14 years old. Why didn't I know the answer? Why had I never asked? Linda came back down 20 minutes later, found me still standing there, mug in hand, staring at nothing. You okay? She asked, her voice soft. Careful. Yeah, I said, too quickly. Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking. About Emma's question. It wasn't a question. She knew. Yeah. Linda came over, put her hand on my arm. You seemed rattled. I wasn't rattled. David. I looked at her, my wife, my eternal companion. We'd been sealed in the temple, for time and all eternity. Everything we'd built together was founded on the church, our marriage, our family, our entire life. I just want to make sure I give her the right answer, I said. Linda studied my face. You don't think it's true, do you? That anti-Mormon stuff? Of course not. Then why are you worried? Good question. Why was I worried? If it wasn't true, if it was just lies and distortions, then what was there to worry about? I'd look it up, find the truth, and give Emma a solid, faithful answer. Easy. Except my hands were shaking. I'm not worried, I lied. I just want to be prepared. You know how she is, she'll ask follow-up questions, I want to have all the facts. Linda nodded, but I could tell she wasn't fully convinced. Just be careful, okay? Don't go down any rabbit holes. Stick to church sources. I will. She kissed me on the cheek and headed upstairs. I heard her footsteps fade, heard the bedroom door close, and then it was just me, alone in the living room. With that question. I should have gone to bed. I should have prayed. I should have opened the ensign or called my dad or talked to the bishop. That's what I should have done. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I sat down on the couch. The house was quiet. Just the hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the distant sound of a car passing outside. I unlocked my phone, opened Safari, and stared at the empty search bar. My finger hovered over the keyboard. This was stupid. I was being ridiculous. It was probably nothing. Probably just exaggerated rumors. Probably easily explained. I'd type it in, find a quick answer from the church, and go to bed. 5 minutes tops. I typed, "Did Joseph Smith marry 14-year-old?" My finger hovered over the search button, and I hesitated, because somewhere, deep in a place I didn't want to look, I knew. I knew that if I pressed that button, something would change. I knew that some questions once asked can't be unasked. Some doors once opened can't be closed. I thought about Emma, 14 years old, sitting at that table, trusting me. I thought about Linda, upstairs, trusting me. I thought about my testimony, my foundation, everything I'd built my entire life on. And then I thought about Helen, whatever her last name was, 14 years old, standing in front of Joseph Smith. Did she have a choice? Did she understand? Did she want to say no but couldn't? I pressed search. The results loaded. My eyes scanned the first few links: Wikipedia, Reddit, some ex-Mormon website, and then churchofjesuschrist.org, official church website, gospel topics essays. My heart stopped. I clicked it. The page loaded. Plural marriage in Kirtland and Nauvoo. I started reading. Official church essay, correlated material, approved by the First Presidency. Joseph Smith was sealed to a number of women who were already married. In addition, he was sealed to women ranging in age from their early teens to mid-40s. Early teens. I read it again. Early teens. Not some people claim, or critics say, or according to anti-Mormon sources. Just stated as fact on the church's own website. I clicked another link, found a name, Helen Mar Kimball, sealed to Joseph Smith in May 1843. She was 14. Several months before her 15th birthday, the essay said. Like that made it better. Joseph Smith was 37. I set my phone down, picked it up, read it again, set it down. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. This couldn't be right. There had to be more context. There had to be an explanation. I kept reading. Helen Mar Kimball's own account, written years later. I was young and they deceived me by saying the salvation of our whole family depended on it. Deceived. I kept scrolling, found more names. Fanny Alger, 16 years old. Nancy Winchester, 14 years old. Sarah Ann Whitney, 17 years old. Lucy Walker, 17 years old. Kept scrolling, found something worse. Some of them were already married, to other men, living men, and Joseph married them anyway. Polyandry, they called it. Married women who already had husbands. My stomach turned. I clicked over to Fair Mormon. Maybe they'd have answers. Maybe they'd explain it in a way that made sense. I read their apologetic response. Marriage in the 1800s didn't necessarily mean what it means today. There's no evidence most of these marriages were consummated. It was normal for girls to marry young in that era. I opened another tab, Googled average marriage age 1840s America, 20 to 22 years old, not 14, not 16, 20 to 22. So it wasn't normal. It wasn't the culture. It was, what? What was it? I went back to the Gospel Topics essay, read more, found another section. Joseph Smith's teachings on plural marriage were not published openly during his lifetime. Not published openly, meaning kept secret. Why would a revelation from God need to be kept secret? I kept reading, found references to Joseph denying it publicly, multiple times, in print, in sermons. No man has more than one wife. That's what he said, while he had more than 30. My head was spinning. I looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m. I'd been reading for an hour. Have you ever felt trapped between who you were supposed to be and who you really are? Share your experience in the comments below. I should have stopped. I should have closed my phone, gone to bed, prayed about it, but I couldn't. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. I couldn't look away. I clicked another link. Book of Abraham. Something I'd always just accepted. Joseph translated ancient papyrus. Gave us the pearl of great price, sacred scripture, except the papyrus was later found. Egyptologists translated it. It was a common funeral text, had nothing to do with Abraham. The Church's response, in another Gospel Topics essay, the relationship between the papyrus and the book is not fully understood. Not fully understood. I clicked another link. First Vision, the foundational story of the Restoration. Joseph Smith, 14 years old, goes into the grove. Sees God the Father and Jesus Christ. They tell him to join no church, except there were multiple accounts, written at different times, and they didn't match. In 1832, Joseph wrote that he only saw Jesus. No mention of God the Father. No mention of being told all churches were wrong. In 1838, the official version, he saw both. They told him all churches were an abomination. Different stories, different details, different years. Why didn't I know this? Why hadn't anyone told me? I kept clicking. Kinderhook plates. Joseph translated them. Said they were from ancient people. Turns out they were modern forgeries, made by locals as a hoax. The Book of Mormon and DNA evidence. Native Americans aren't descended from Hebrews. The Church quietly changed the introduction to the Book of Mormon in 2006, removing the claim that they were the principal ancestors. Each click, each article, each essay, each footnote. It was like pulling a thread on a sweater and watching the whole thing unravel. I looked up. The room was blurry. I realized I was crying. It was 1:23 a.m. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, turned on the light, stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. My face was pale. I looked like I'd seen a ghost. Maybe I had. The ghost of the man I used to be. The man who had all the answers. The man who knew the church was true. I gripped the edge of the sink. My stomach churned. I leaned over and vomited. After, I rinsed my mouth. Splashed water on my face. Stared at the mirror again. And I thought about Emma. 14 years old. The same age as Helen Mar Kimball. Asking me a simple question. I thought about all the people I'd baptized on my mission. All the lessons I'd taught. All the testimonies I'd borne. I know this church is true. I know Joseph Smith was a prophet. What if I was wrong? What if I'd been lying to people without knowing it? What if I'd been lying to myself? I heard a sound. Footsteps. I quickly wiped my face, tried to compose myself. The bathroom door was open. Linda appeared in the doorway, squinting in the light. Hair messy, half asleep. "You okay?" she asked. I heard, "Yeah," I said quickly. "Just couldn't sleep. Drank too much water." She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment she knew something was wrong. Her expression shifted. "David, I'm fine," I said. "Really, go back to bed. I'll be there in a minute." She hesitated, then nodded. "Don't stay up too late." "I won't." She left. I heard her footsteps fade down the hall, heard the bedroom door close. I looked at myself in the mirror one more time, and I realized something. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because if I told her what I'd found, if I showed her those essays, those histories, those contradictions, it would break her. It would break us. Everything we'd built. Everything we believed. Everything we were. I walked back to the living room. Picked up my phone. Looked at all the tabs still open. Gospel Topics essays. Fair Mormon apologetics. Wikipedia articles. Ex-Mormon Reddit threads. I should have closed them. Should have deleted my search history. Should have pretended I never looked. But I didn't. Because tomorrow Emma was going to ask again, and I had to have an answer. I sat back down on the couch, opened my laptop, and kept reading. By 2:47 a.m., I was sitting in my car in the garage. Engine off, phone in my hand. tears on my face. And that's where we started. That's where you found me. 3 hours of research, 33 wives, teenage brides, secret marriages, public denials, translation errors, changing stories, apologetics that only made it worse. And tomorrow morning, my 14-year-old daughter was going to ask me, "So, Dad, did you find the answer?" And I was going to have to choose. Lie to her, protect her faith, protect my faith, protect everything, or tell her the truth, and watch it all collapse. Block 02D4. I didn't sleep. By the time the sun came up, I'd been awake for 26 hours straight. I heard Linda's alarm go off at 6:15 a.m. Heard her get up, shower, start moving around upstairs. I was still sitting on the couch. Laptop closed now. Phone face down on the cushion next to me, just staring at the wall. The house started waking up. I heard Sophie's little feet padding down the hallway. Heard Caleb's door open. Heard Linda calling down the stairs. "David, can you start breakfast?" I stood up. My legs felt weak. My head was pounding. I walked into the kitchen like I was moving through water. Everything felt slow, heavy, unreal. I made pancakes. That's what I always make on Wednesday mornings. Pancakes with chocolate chips for Sophie, plain for Caleb, blueberries for Emma. I moved on autopilot, mixing batter, heating the griddle, flipping, stacking. The smell of butter and maple syrup filling the kitchen. Normal. Everything looked normal. Linda came downstairs first, dressed for work. She's a dental hygienist, works 3 days a week. She kissed me on the cheek. "You look tired," she said. "Did you ever come to bed?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just woke up early." She poured herself orange juice, started packing lunches. Sophie came bouncing down next, already talking about her day, something about a field trip to a pumpkin patch. Caleb slouched in, hoodie up, earbuds in, typical preteen mode. He grabbed a plate without looking at me. And then Emma. She came down the stairs, backpack over one shoulder, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked rested, happy, normal. And when she saw me, she smiled. "Morning, Dad." "Morning, sweetheart." She sat down at the table, took the plate I handed her, blueberry pancakes, her favorite, poured syrup, cut a bite. And then, casual as anything, like she was asking about the weather, "So, Dad, did you find the answer? About Joseph Smith?" The fork in my hand stopped halfway to my mouth. I felt Linda's eyes on me from across the kitchen, felt Caleb glance up. Sophie kept eating, oblivious, syrup on her chin. Emma was looking at me, waiting, trusting. I had maybe 3 seconds to decide. 3 seconds to choose what kind of father I was going to be. What kind of man? Option 1. Lie. Say it's not true. Say it's anti-Mormon propaganda. Blame the internet. Blame the critics. Tell her to have faith and not worry about it. Preserve her innocence. Preserve our family. Preserve everything. Option 2. Deflect. Say it's complicated. Say we'll talk about it later. Say I need to study more. Buy time. Hope she forgets. Hope it goes away. Option 3. Tell the truth. I looked at Emma. Really looked at her. 14 years old. Sitting there in our kitchen, eating pancakes, wearing her young women's medallion around her neck. The same age as Helen Mar Kimball. The same age Helen was when she stood in front of Joseph Smith and was told her family's salvation depended on her saying yes, and I thought, if I lie now and she finds out later, and she will find out because the truth always comes out eventually, she'll never trust me again. She'll know I chose the church over her. She'll know I chose a lie over her. But if I tell her the truth, I set my fork down. Yes, Emma, it's true. The kitchen went silent. Linda's hand froze on the lunchbox she was packing. Caleb's eyes went wide. Sophie kept eating, but even she sensed something was wrong. Emma blinked. Wait, really? Really? I looked it up last night. It's actually on the church's website, the Gospel Topics Essays. Her name was Helen Mar Kimball. She was 14 years old when she was sealed to Joseph Smith. He was 37. I watched Emma's face. Watched the information land. Watched her process it. Her expression shifted from curious to confused to something else. Something I couldn't quite read. But she started, then stopped. But why didn't anyone tell us? Why isn't that in seminary? I don't know, sweetheart. Linda stepped forward. Her voice was tight, controlled. David, can I talk to you in the other room? Linda, now. I stood up, followed her into the living room. She closed the door behind us. And the moment it clicked shut, she turned on me. What are you doing? Her voice was low but sharp, like a hiss. You can't just... You're going to destroy her testimony. I looked it up, Linda, on churchofjesuschrist.org. It's not anti-Mormon, it's from the church. Then it must have context. There must be an explanation. I read the explanations. My voice came out harder than I meant it to. They don't make it better. They make it worse. Linda's eyes were filling with tears. You're supposed to protect their faith, not tear it down. I'm supposed to tell them the truth. The truth? She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Or your doubts? Because those aren't the same thing, David. Linda, he was 37 years old, she was 14. Her own words, her own account, says they deceived her, that she felt pressured. How am I supposed to explain that to our daughter? You have faith, Linda said, her voice breaking. You trust the prophet. You trust that God had reasons we don't understand. That's how. I'm trying. I felt my own voice crack. I'm trying to have faith. But I can't lie to Emma. I can't look her in the eye and tell her something isn't true when it is. Then what are you going to do? Linda's face was pale. Are you going to tell her everything you found? Are you going to destroy everything we've taught her? Everything we've built? I didn't have an answer, because I didn't know. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I couldn't go back, couldn't unknow what I'd learned, couldn't unsee what I'd seen. I don't know, I said finally, quietly. Linda stared at me, and I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Fear. She was afraid of me, afraid of what I was becoming. I have to get to work, she said. Her voice was cold now, distant. We'll talk about this tonight. She walked past me, back into the kitchen. I heard her say something to the kids in that bright fake voice people use when they're pretending everything's fine. Heard her grab her purse. Heard the front door open and close. And then it was just me and the kids. I walked back into the kitchen. Emma was still sitting at the table, pancakes untouched now. Caleb was staring at his phone, but I could tell he was listening. Sophie was asking if she could have more syrup. I sat down across from Emma. You okay? She looked up at me. Dad. If that's true, what else is true? What else don't we know? And there it was. The question I'd been asking myself all night. The question that opened the door to everything. I don't know, I said. But I'm going to find out. And I'll be honest with you. Okay? Whatever I find, I'll tell you the truth. Emma nodded slowly, but her eyes were scared, and I realized I'd just changed her entire world. In one breakfast conversation, one moment of honesty, and there was no going back. The kids left for school. The house went quiet again, and I was alone. I should have gone to work. I'm an accountant, work from home most days, which usually I love, but I couldn't focus, couldn't think about spreadsheets and tax codes and quarterly reports. All I could think about was last night, all those websites, all those essays, all those contradictions. I opened my laptop again, told myself I'd just do a little more research, just check a few more things. Just make sure I had the full picture before I talked to Linda tonight. But once I started, I couldn't stop. I read about the Book of Abraham again, Read the whole Gospel Topics essay this time, about how Joseph claimed to translate ancient Egyptian papyri, how he said it was written by Abraham's own hand, how it became scripture, the pearl of great price, how we build entire doctrines on it, the nature of God, the pre-mortal existence, the plan of salvation. And then I read about how the papyri were rediscovered in 1967, how Egyptologists, actual experts, not just critics, translated them, how they were common funeral texts, how they had nothing to do with Abraham, how Joseph's translation was completely, provably wrong. The Church's response: the relationship between the papyrus and the text is not fully understood. Not fully understood. That phrase again. The same phrase they used for everything uncomfortable, everything that didn't add up. I clicked to another essay. First Vision. I read all the different accounts, really read them this time, not just skimming, not just accepting, really analyzing. 1832 account. Joseph sees Jesus alone. Jesus tells him his sins are forgiven. No mention of God the Father. No mention of being told all churches are wrong. No persecution mentioned. 1835 account. Joseph sees many angels and two personages. Doesn't specify who. 1838 account. The official one. The one we all know. God the Father and Jesus Christ appear. Tell him all churches are abominations. Warns him he'll be persecuted. Different stories, different details, different messages, written at different times, changed over the years. Why? Why would the story change? If it really happened, if it was the foundational event of the restoration, why wouldn't the details stay consistent? I kept reading, found analysis from church historians, faithful members trying to reconcile the differences. Memory is imperfect. He emphasized different aspects for different audiences. The core message is the same. But it wasn't the same. In one version, he already knew all churches were wrong before he went to pray. In another, he didn't know what to believe. In one, he was persecuted immediately. In another, no persecution for years. I clicked to another tab. DNA evidence and the Book of Mormon. I'd heard about this before, heard critics mention it, but I'd never actually looked into it. The Book of Mormon claims Native Americans are descendants of Hebrew immigrants who came to the Americas around 600 BC. Lehi's family, Lamanites and Nephites. The entire premise of the book depends on it, but DNA evidence shows Native Americans are descended from Asian populations. No Middle Eastern DNA, none. The church changed the introduction to the Book of Mormon in 2006. Used to say Native Americans were the principal ancestors of the Lamanites. Now it says, among the ancestors. Quietly, without announcement, just changed it. If the Book of Mormon is wrong about who the Lamanites are, what else is it wrong about? I kept clicking. Kinderhook plates. Someone in the ward had mentioned them once years ago, dismissed them as anti-Mormon lies. But here was the church's own essay about them. In 1843, metal plates were discovered near Kinderhook, Illinois. They had strange engravings. Joseph Smith examined them, said he could translate them. Said they were an ancient record of a descendant of Ham. Decades later, one of the men who discovered them confessed they were forgeries, made as a hoax, to trick Joseph Smith, and he translated them anyway. The church's response: the fragments were too small to translate, but there are journal entries, witness accounts. Joseph did claim to translate them. If Joseph couldn't tell the difference between ancient records and modern forgeries, how can we trust anything he translated? I looked at the clock. It was 2:37 p.m. I'd been reading for hours. My eyes hurt, my head hurt, my chest hurt. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, drank it, stared out the window at the mountains. The leaves were still bright, orange and gold and red. Beautiful. The world outside looked exactly the same as it did yesterday. But everything was different. My phone buzzed. Text from the bishop. Brother Peterson, can you come by my office tonight around 7? Need to discuss something. My stomach dropped. Linda, she must have called him, told him I was struggling, told him I was teaching the kids things I shouldn't, told him I was having a faith crisis. I typed back, I'll be there. I had 4 hours until that meeting. 4 hours to figure out what I was going to say. 4 hours to decide who I was going to be. I sat back down at the laptop, opened another tab, typed Mormon Church Truth Claims, and kept reading. By the time I had to leave for the church, I'd gone through everything: the treasure digging, the seer stone in the hat, the witnesses to the Book of Mormon and how most of them left the church, the Kirtland Bank scandal, Mountain Meadows massacre, blood atonement, Adam God theory, the priesthood ban on black members until 1978, the November 2015 policy on children of gay parents, the $100 billion investment fund the church hid, the cover-up of sexual abuse cases. Each thing by itself could maybe be explained, maybe rationalized, maybe shelved, but all of it together, all of it at once. It wasn't just cracks in the foundation. It was the foundation crumbling, turning to dust, and I was standing on it, watching it fall away beneath my feet. I got in my car, drove to the church, pulled into the parking lot, sat there for a minute, staring at the building. The Provo 3rd Ward Chapel. I'd been coming here my whole life, got baptized in that font, blessed my babies on that stand, gave talks from that pulpit, bore my testimony in that room. And now I was walking in to meet with the bishop, knowing that everything had changed, knowing that I couldn't fake it anymore, knowing that I was probably about to lose everything. I walked inside. The hallways were empty. Wednesday evening, no activities tonight. Just the bishop's office light on. I knocked. Come in. I opened the door. Bishop Richards was sitting behind his desk. Late 50s, good man, kind man. Been bishop for 3 years. He smiled when he saw me, but it didn't reach his eyes. David, thanks for coming. Sit down. I sat. My heart was pounding. Linda called me this morning, he said. No preamble, straight to it. She's concerned. Says you've been researching church history. Says you told Emma some difficult things. I nodded. Didn't trust my voice yet. Want to tell me what's going on? I took a breath. Emma asked me a question about Joseph Smith and plural marriage, about Helen Mar Kimball. I looked it up, found the Gospel Topics essays, and it led to other things. What other things? Book of Abraham, First Vision accounts, DNA evidence, Kinderhook plates, all of it. Bishop Richards leaned back in his chair, was quiet for a moment. Then, and how are you feeling about what you found? I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw something in his face, something I hadn't expected. He wasn't surprised, he wasn't defensive. He looked tired, sad, like he'd had this conversation before. Bishop, I said slowly, did you know about all of this? The essays, the history? He sighed, long and heavy. Yeah, David, I knew. How long? About 5 years. Had my own crisis, did my own research, spent a lot of nights where you probably spent last night. And you stayed. I stayed. Why? He leaned forward, folded his hands on the desk. Because I decided that even if the history is messy, even if Joseph was flawed, even if some of the truth claims don't hold up the way I was taught, I still find value here, in the community, in the principles, in the structure it gives my life. I choose to have faith anyway. How? My voice cracked. How do you just ignore it? I don't ignore it. He smiled, but it was sad. I put it on the shelf. I acknowledge it's there. But I choose to focus on what brings me peace, on what helps me be a better person, On what connects me to God, or whatever God is. I stared at him. Bishop. Emma asked me a direct question, and I couldn't lie to her. I can't pretend I don't know what I know now. I'm not asking you to lie. Then what are you asking? I'm asking you to think about the consequences. For you, for Linda, for your kids, for your calling. If you keep going down this road, if you keep digging, if you keep sharing what you find, it's going to cost you everything, David. Your marriage, your community, your identity, everything. And if I don't? If I just put it on the shelf? Pretend? Go through the motions? Then maybe you save all of that. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking again. Bishop, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Do you still sustain the prophet? Do you really believe he speaks for God? The silence that followed was the longest of my life. Finally, Bishop Richards said quietly, I sustain the organization. I support the structure. I believe we're all trying our best to figure out what's true. And I choose to hope that God is in there somewhere, working through imperfect people. That's not an answer. It's the best answer I have. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I stood anyway. I can't do that, Bishop. I can't teach my daughter to sustain something I don't believe in. I can't stand up in sacrament meeting and bear testimony to things I'm not sure are true. I can't be two people. Bishop Richards stood too. He looked sad. Really, genuinely sad. David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me too. Okay. Do you still sustain the prophet as a prophet, seer, and revelator? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because I couldn't say yes, and I couldn't quite say no, because saying no made it real, made it final, made it the end of everything. I started. Stopped. Tried again. I don't know. Bishop Richards nodded slowly. Then I think you need to take some time. Step away from your calling. Figure out what you believe. And we'll go from there. You're releasing me? I'm giving you space to figure things out, without the pressure of a calling. Without having to stand up every week and pretend. I should have felt relieved, should have felt grateful. But all I felt was empty, because I knew what this meant. This was the beginning of the end. Once you step away, once you admit doubt, once you can't say yes when they ask if you sustain the prophet, you're on your way out, whether you know it yet or not. Okay, I said. David. He came around the desk, put his hand on my shoulder. I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. But please, be gentle with Linda, with your kids. This is going to be hard on them too. I nodded, couldn't speak, turned and walked out. The hallway felt longer on the way out. The chapel felt bigger, emptier, like it was already becoming foreign to me, like I was already becoming a stranger in the place I'd called home my entire life. I got in my car, sat there in the parking lot, and I realized I didn't want to go home, didn't want to face Linda, didn't want to have the fight that was coming, didn't want to see the fear in her eyes, the disappointment, the grief. So I just sat there, in the church parking lot, watching the sun set behind the mountains, watching the sky turn from blue to purple to black, watching the stars come out one by one. And I thought about Emma, about her question, about how one simple question had detonated my entire life. And I thought about Helen Mar Kimball, 14 years old, standing in front of Joseph Smith, being told her family's salvation depended on her saying yes. Did anyone give her the truth? Did anyone tell her she had a choice? Did anyone tell her it was okay to say no? Or did they all just protect the church, protect the prophet, protect the system? I pulled out my phone, opened it, stared at the screen, And I made a decision. I was going to tell Emma everything, not to destroy her faith, not to hurt her, but to give her what Helen Mar Kimball never had, a choice, based on truth. Instead of deception, even if it cost me everything. Block 03D4. I got home around 9 p.m. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. Linda's car was in the driveway. The kids were probably in bed. I sat in my car for another 10 minutes, building up the courage to go inside. When I finally walked through the door, Linda was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting. No phone, no book. Just sitting there, hands folded, face blank. I knew that look. The calm before the storm. "Bishop called me," she said. Her voice was flat, empty. "Yeah." "He released you from your calling?" "Yeah." "He said you told him you don't know if you sustain the prophet anymore." I set my keys on the counter. Didn't look at her. That's what I said. "David." Her voice cracked. Just my name, but it carried everything. 17 years of marriage, 3 kids, a temple ceiling, a life built on shared faith. All of it in those 2 syllables. I finally looked at her. She wasn't crying. That was worse somehow. If she'd been crying, I could have comforted her, could have held her. But she just looked hollow, like something inside her had broken, and she was still trying to figure out what it was. "How did this happen?" she asked. "How did we go from family scripture study on Tuesday to this in 2 days?" Emma asked a question. "And you couldn't just tell her to have faith? You couldn't just say some things are hard to understand, but we trust the prophet anyway?" "Linda, I looked it up. I read the church's own essays. I read the sources. I read Joseph's own words. I can't unknow it. I can't pretend I didn't see it. Then you're choosing this. You're choosing doubt over faith. You're choosing to destroy our family. I'm choosing truth." She laughed, sharp, bitter. "Truth? Or your version of truth? Because my truth is that I know this church is true. I know Joseph Smith was a prophet. I know the Book of Mormon is the Word of God. I've felt the Spirit confirm it thousands of times. That's my truth. So which one of us is right, David? Which one of us gets to decide?" I didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right. In a way. Her experiences were real to her. Her feelings were real. The peace she'd felt, the answers she'd received, the comfort the church had given her. All of it was real. Who was I to tell her it wasn't? But the facts were also real. The history was real. The contradictions were real. Helen Mar Kimball was real. And I couldn't reconcile those 2 things anymore. "I don't know," I said finally. "I don't know who's right. I just know I can't lie to Emma. I can't stand in front of her and tell her things I don't believe anymore." "Then what are you going to do?" Linda stood up. Her voice was rising now. The calm was breaking. "Are you going to leave the church? Are you going to take the kids with you? Are you going to tear apart everything we've built?" "I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm still figuring it out." "Well, you better figure it out fast, David, because I'm not going to let you destroy our children's testimonies. I'm not going to let you poison them with your doubts." "I'm not trying to poison anyone." Emma asked me a question and I gave her an honest answer. "You gave her information she wasn't ready for. She's 14 years old. She doesn't need to know every ugly detail of church history. She's the same age Helen Mar Kimball was." My voice was loud now too. Louder than I meant it to be. "She's the same age, Linda. And if someone had told Helen the truth, if someone had given her all the information, maybe she would have had a real choice. Maybe she could have said no. But nobody told her the truth. They protected the prophet instead. They protected the church instead. And I'm not going to do that to Emma." Linda stared at me, tears finally coming now. "You've already left, haven't you? In your heart. You've already decided. You're done with the church." "I don't know if I'm done, but I know I can't keep pretending. I can't keep going through the motions. I can't stand up in sacrament meeting and bear testimony to something I don't believe anymore. Then I don't know if I can stay married to you. The words hung in the air, heavy, final. I looked at my wife, my eternal companion, the woman I'd been sealed to in the temple, for time and all eternity, and I saw the fear in her eyes. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was terrified, terrified that if she stayed with me, if she supported me, she'd lose her own faith, terrified that I'd drag her down with me, terrified that our ceiling would be broken, terrified that she'd lose me forever, not just in this life, but in the next. Linda, I need you to sleep in the guest room tonight, she said. Her voice was quiet again, controlled. I can't be near you right now. I need space. I need to think. I need to pray. I nodded, didn't trust myself to speak. She walked past me, stopped at the doorway, didn't turn around. If you're going to keep doing this, keep researching, keep questioning, keep teaching the kids things I don't want them to know, then we need to figure out what that means for us, for our marriage, for our family. And then she was gone, footsteps up the stairs, bedroom door closing, locking. I stood alone in the kitchen, the same kitchen where just this morning I'd made pancakes, where Emma had asked her follow-up question, where everything had started to unravel faster than I could catch it. I walked to the guest room, small, barely furnished. We'd used it maybe twice in 15 years. It smelled like storage and old books. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out my phone, stared at it. I'd love to know, what moment in this story hit you the hardest? Tell me in the comments. I should have prayed. That's what I would have done a week ago. Knelt down, asked for guidance, asked for peace, asked for confirmation. But I didn't know who I'd be praying to anymore, or if anyone was listening. So I just sat there, in the dark, in the guest room, in the ruins of everything I'd built. And I thought about tomorrow, about facing Emma, about having the conversation I'd promised her, about telling her everything, even though it was going to cost me my marriage, even though it was going to fracture my family, even though it was going to destroy the only life I'd ever known, because Helen Mar Kimball didn't get the truth, didn't get a choice, didn't get someone to stand up and say, this isn't right, but Emma would, even if it killed me. The next morning I made breakfast again, toast this time, easier, less effort. The kids came down one by one. Linda came down last, already dressed for work, face carefully neutral. She didn't look at me. Emma sat down, poured cereal, looked up at me with those careful eyes, the ones that were trying to figure out if everything was okay or if the world was ending. Dad, she said quietly, can we talk? Later? About everything? Linda's spoon stopped midair. She looked at Emma, then at me. Her expression was clear. Don't you dare. I looked at Emma. 14 years old, my daughter, my responsibility. Yeah, I said. After school, we'll talk. Linda stood up abruptly, grabbed her purse. I have to go. I'll be late tonight. Don't wait up. She left without kissing me goodbye, without saying I love you like she always did. Just left. Emma watched her go, then looked at me. Are you and Mom fighting? Because of what I asked? No, sweetheart. Not because of what you asked. Because of a lot of things. But none of it is your fault. Okay? She nodded, but I could see she didn't believe me. Kids always know. They always feel it when the foundation shifts beneath them. The day passed slowly. I tried to work, stared at spreadsheets, moved numbers around, accomplished nothing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same thing. Helen Mar Kimball, 14 years old, standing in front of Joseph Smith, being told her family's salvation depended on her saying yes. Did she want to say no? Did she try? Did anyone give her permission to refuse? Around 3 p.m., I heard the front door open. Emma, home from school, I heard her drop her backpack, heard her footsteps coming toward my office. She appeared in the doorway, still in her school clothes, face serious. "Is now okay?" she asked. "To talk?" I closed my laptop. "Yeah, now is okay." "Want to sit in the living room?" We walked to the living room together, sat on the couch, the same couch where 3 nights ago I'd sat researching until 3 a.m., where my entire world had started to collapse. Emma pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapped her arms around them. She looked small, young, scared. "Dad," she said, "I need you to tell me the truth. About everything. Not just the 14-year-old thing. Everything. Because I've been thinking about it. And if that's true and nobody told us, what else is true? What else don't we know?" There it was. The question that mattered. The question that would determine everything. I could still walk it back. Could still soften it. Could still say, "It's complicated, let's not worry about it, just have faith." But when I looked at her face, when I saw the trust in her eyes, I knew I couldn't. I'd made a promise. To myself, to her, to Helen Mar Kimball's ghost. "Okay," I said. "I'm going to tell you everything I found, and it's going to be hard to hear. And it might change how you feel about the church, and I'm sorry for that, but you deserve the truth." Emma nodded. "I'm ready." I pulled out my laptop, opened it, brought up the Gospel Topics essays. "Okay, so you already know about Helen Mar Kimball. But there's more about polygamy that I didn't know, that nobody told me." I clicked through, showed her the essay, read sections out loud. Joseph Smith was sealed to between 30 and 40 women. Some of them were teenagers. Some of them were already married, to other men, living men. That's called polyandry. Emma's eyes went wide. "Wait, he married women who were already married?" "Yes, and he kept it secret. He denied it publicly, multiple times. Said in the newspaper, said in sermons, no man has more than one wife, while he had more than 30. But why would he lie? I don't know. The essays say it was complicated. That there was persecution, that he had to be careful. But Emma, if it was from God, if it was a commandment, why would he need to lie about it?" She didn't answer, just stared at the screen. I kept going. Showed her the Book of Abraham essay. Explained how the papyrus was found, how it was translated by real Egyptologists, how it had nothing to do with Abraham. "But we're taught that Joseph translated it," Emma said, "that it's scripture, that it's the word of God." I know. That's what I was taught too. But the translation is provably wrong. Egyptologists, people who actually read ancient Egyptian, say it's a common funeral text. Joseph's translation doesn't match. I showed her the first vision essays, the different accounts, the different details. In 1832, he says he only saw Jesus, no father, no mention of being told all churches are wrong. But in 1838, the version we know, he sees both, and they tell him all churches are an abomination. The stories don't match. Emma was quiet for a long time, just staring at the laptop. Then, "Dad, if the first vision story changed, if Joseph's translation of the papyrus was wrong, if he lied about polygamy, how can we trust any of it? How can we trust the Book of Mormon? How can we trust anything?" That's the question I've been asking myself for 3 days. "What's your answer?" I looked at my daughter, 14 years old, sitting on the couch in our living room in Provo, Utah, growing up in the church, surrounded by it, defined by it, and I was about to take that away from her, about to show her that the foundation she'd been standing on her whole life was crumbling. "I don't think I trust it anymore," I said quietly. "I don't think I believe Joseph Smith was a prophet. I don't think the Book of Mormon is what I was taught it was. I don't think the church is what I was taught it was." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "So everything we've been taught, everything we've believed, it's not true?" I don't know if it's all not true. Maybe there's truth in some of it. Maybe there's value in some of it. But the foundational claims that Joseph was a prophet, that the Book of Mormon is an ancient record, that the church is the only true church, I don't think I can believe those anymore. A tear rolled down Emma's cheek. But if it's not true, then what happens to us? What happens to our family? Are we still sealed? Will we still be together forever? And there it was. The real cost. Not just belief, not just community, but family, eternity, everything we'd been promised. I don't know, I said. My voice was breaking. I don't know what it means for our sealing. I don't know what it means for forever. But Emma, I know this. I love you. Right now. In this life. And that's real, that's true. And nobody can take that away from us. Emma started crying. Really crying. And I pulled her into a hug. Held her while she sobbed. Felt her shaking against me. And I cried too. For the innocence I'd just destroyed. For the faith I'd just shattered. For the family I was watching fracture in real time. I'm so sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't know. I'm so sorry I taught you things that might not be true. I'm so sorry you have to go through this. Emma pulled back, wiped her eyes. Dad, why did you tell me? Why couldn't you just let me keep believing? Because you're 14, the same age Helen Marr was. And if someone had told her the truth, all of it, maybe she could have made a real choice. Maybe she could have said no. Maybe she could have protected herself. But nobody told her. They protected the church instead. They protected Joseph instead. And I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to lie to you to protect a system, even if it costs me everything. Emma stared at me, fresh tears on her face. And then she said something I didn't expect. Thank you. For what? For telling me the truth, for not lying, for treating me like I'm old enough to know. I pulled her into another hug, held her tight, and for just a moment, in the middle of all the chaos and grief and destruction, I felt something that might have been peace. I'd done the right thing, even if it destroyed me, even if Linda left, even if I lost my calling, my community, my identity. I'd done the right thing. I'd given Emma what Helen Marr Kimball never had. The truth. And the choice that comes with it. That evening, Linda came home late. After 9 p.m., the kids were already in bed. I was sitting in the living room, laptop closed, lights off, just sitting in the dark. She came in, saw me, stopped. We need to talk, she said. Okay. She sat down across from me. Not next to me. Across. Distance between us. I talked to my mom today, she said. And my sister. And the Relief Society president. And they all said the same thing. I need to protect the kids. I need to protect their faith, even if that means protecting them from you. My chest tightened. Linda, I'm not leaving. Not yet. But I need you to make a choice. Either you stop researching, stop questioning, stop teaching the kids things that will destroy their testimonies. You come back to church. You rebuild your faith. You put this on the shelf, and we move forward. Or what? Or I take the kids, and we stay with my parents for a while. Until you figure out what you're going to do, because I can't watch you tear them away from the gospel. I can't watch you destroy everything we've built. I won't. Linda, I talked to Emma today. I showed her the essays. I told her the truth. And you know what she said? She thanked me. She thanked me for not lying to her. Linda's face went pale, then red. You showed her what? Today? After I specifically told you not to? She asked. She deserved an answer. She's 14 years old, David. She's a child. She doesn't need to know every ugly detail of church history. She needs to know that her parents believe. that her family is stable, that God loves her and the church is true. But I don't know if the church is true anymore, so how can I tell her that? Linda stood up. She was shaking. Then I guess you've made your choice. I'll start packing tomorrow. The kids and I will be gone by the weekend. Linda, please. No, you've done enough. You've destroyed my husband's faith. You've destroyed my daughter's testimony. You've destroyed our family, and I'm not going to stand here and watch you finish the job. She turned and walked toward the stairs. I stood up, followed her. Linda, wait. Please. Can we just talk about this? Can we figure this out together? She spun around, face streaked with tears. Together? You made every decision alone, you researched alone, you spiraled alone, you told Emma alone, you didn't ask me, you didn't consider me, you just blew up our entire life and expected me to be okay with it. I'm sorry. I should have talked to you first, I should have. It's too late, David, you can't unring that bell. You can't unbreak her shelf. She's going to leave the church now, because of you, and I can't forgive that. What if she's better off knowing the truth? Linda laughed, cold, broken. Better off? You think she's better off knowing that everything she's been taught is a lie? You think she's better off losing her faith at 14? Losing her community? Losing her identity? You think that's better? I think it's better than living a lie. Then you and I have very different definitions of better. She turned and went upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close. Lock. Again. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, alone, in the dark, in the wreckage of my marriage, and I thought, maybe Linda's right. Maybe I've destroyed everything. Maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut, put it on the shelf, pretended, protected the peace. But then I thought about Emma, about the way she'd thanked me, about the way she'd looked at me, not with betrayal, but with relief. Like she'd been waiting for someone to tell her the truth. Like she'd been feeling the cracks too, but thought she was crazy, thought she was alone. And I knew, even if it cost me my marriage, even if it cost me my family, even if it cost me everything, I'd done the right thing. If this story moved you and you'd like to support more content like this, there's a link in the description and pinned comment where you can buy me a coffee. Every contribution helps keep these stories alive. I walked to the guest room, sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out my phone, and I did something I hadn't done in days. I texted my dad. Dad, I need to talk. Can I call you? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, of course, son, call anytime. I hit dial. He picked up on the first ring. David, you okay? And I broke. Just completely broke. Started crying so hard I could barely breathe. Could barely speak. Dad, I managed to get out. I don't know if the church is true anymore, and I don't know what to do. Silence on the other end. Long, heavy. Then quietly. I know, son. I know. You know? I've known for a long time, since before you were born. But I stayed. For your mom, for you kids, for the family. I put it on the shelf and I stayed. I couldn't speak. My dad. My faithful, believing, never miss a Sunday dad. He knew. But you, he continued, his voice thick with emotion. You're braver than I was. You're telling the truth, even when it costs you. And I'm proud of you. Even if it destroys everything, I'm proud of you. I cried harder, because I'd needed to hear that. Needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, wasn't evil, wasn't destroying my family for no reason. What do I do, Dad? Linda's leaving, taking the kids. I'm losing everything. I know, and I'm sorry, but David, you can't live a lie. Not forever. It eats you from the inside out. I did it for 40 years and it nearly killed me. Don't make my mistake. Don't sacrifice yourself to protect a system that doesn't care about you. We talked for an hour. He told me his story. How he'd discovered the same things I had, how he'd made the choice to stay, how it had cost him his authenticity, his peace, parts of his soul, how he'd watched me grow up and hoped I'd never have to face the same choice. And now I was, and I'd chosen differently. When we finally hung up, it was after midnight. The house was quiet, everyone asleep. Just me alone in the guest room staring at the ceiling. And I thought about tomorrow, about the next day, about the next week, about Linda packing, about the kids confused, about moving out or them moving out, about custody arrangements, about explaining to Sophie why Daddy doesn't go to church anymore, about watching Caleb choose between me and his mom, about Emma, stuck in the middle, blaming herself, about losing everything, but also about Helen Markimball, about the truth, about choosing authenticity over comfort, about building something real instead of something pretty. And I made a decision. I was going to keep telling the truth, even if it destroyed me, because some things are worth more than peace. Some things are worth more than keeping the family together. Some things, like truth, like integrity, like giving your daughter the choice you wish someone had given a 14-year-old girl in 1843, some things are worth everything, even if it costs you everything. Block 04-4. Friday morning. Linda didn't come down for breakfast. I heard her moving around upstairs, heard closet doors opening and closing, heard the sound of suitcases being dragged across the floor. The kids heard it too. Sophie asked what Mommy was doing. Caleb pretended not to notice, but his eyes kept drifting toward the ceiling. Emma just sat there, quiet, not eating her cereal. Around 9 a.m., Linda came downstairs with 2 suitcases. Her face was carefully composed. No tears. No emotion. Just blank. "Kids," she said, her voice steady. "We're going to stay at Grandma and Grandpa's house for a little while. Go pack your things, clothes for a week, and your school stuff." Sophie's face crumpled. "Why?" "I don't want to leave." "It's just for a little while, sweetie. Dad needs some time to figure some things out." Caleb looked at me, then at Linda, then back at me. "Is this because Dad doesn't believe anymore?" The room went still. Linda's composure cracked for just a second. I saw the pain flash across her face. Then she recovered. "Just go pack, Caleb, please." He stood up, walked past me without looking at me. Sophie followed, crying. Emma stayed seated. "Emma," Linda said, "you too." "I don't want to go." "Excuse me?" "I said I don't want to go. I want to stay here, with Dad." Linda's face went pale. "Emma, you don't understand what's happening. Your father is going through something. He's confused. He told me the truth, Mom. He showed me things I needed to see, and I'm not leaving him alone." Linda looked at me. Her eyes were full of betrayal, like I'd stolen her daughter, like I'd turned Emma against her. "Did you tell her to say that?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Did you manipulate her into—" "No," I said quickly. "Linda, no. Emma, honey, you should go with your mom. I'll be fine." Emma shook her head. "I'm 14. I can choose, and I choose to stay here." Linda's hands were shaking. She looked at Emma, her oldest, her first baby, the girl she'd raised in the church, and I watched something break in her. "Fine," Linda said, her voice cold. "Fine, stay. But when you realize what he's doing, when you realize he's destroying your eternal salvation, don't come crying to me." She turned and walked upstairs. Came back 10 minutes later with Caleb and Sophie, both carrying backpacks. Sophie was still crying. Caleb looked shell-shocked. Linda didn't look at me, didn't say goodbye, just herded the kids out the door, loaded them into the car, and drove away. Emma and I stood in the doorway watching them go. The house felt enormous suddenly, empty, like all the life had been sucked out of it. Did I just make a huge mistake? Emma asked, her voice small. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm glad you're here. She leaned into me. And we stood there watching the space where Linda's car had been, both of us trying to figure out what happened to our family. The next few days were strange, quiet. Emma and I developed a routine. I'd make breakfast. She'd tell me about school. We'd talk, really talk, about everything, about church history, about what she was feeling, about what came next. On Saturday, we went for a drive, up into the mountains, past the temple, past the MTC where I'd trained for my mission, past all the landmarks of my Mormon life, and we talked. Dad, Emma said, staring out the window at the autumn leaves, do you still believe in God? I'd been thinking about that question for days. I don't know. Maybe. But not the God I was taught about. Not the God who would command Joseph Smith to marry a 14-year-old. Not the God who would send people to outer darkness for drinking coffee. Not that God. What about Jesus? I think maybe Jesus had some good ideas. About loving people. About serving others. About standing up for truth. But I don't know if he was literally God. I don't know if he literally rose from the dead. I don't know if the atonement works the way I was taught. I don't know. That's okay, Emma said. Not knowing. Is it? Yeah. I think it's better to say I don't know than to say I know when you don't. I looked at her, my 14-year-old daughter, who was supposed to be preparing for her young women's medallion, who was supposed to be planning to go to BYU, who was supposed to be dreaming about a temple marriage. And instead she was sitting in a car with her apostate father, talking about religious epistemology. When did you get so wise? I asked. She smiled. Small. Sad. When you gave me permission to ask questions. We drove in silence for a while. Then Emma said, I'm scared, Dad. About Mom. About Caleb and Sophie. About what happens next. Me too. Do you think Mom will ever forgive you? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe this is the end of our marriage. Maybe I destroyed it by choosing truth over peace. Did you destroy it? Or did the church destroy it by teaching us things that weren't true? I looked at her again. Really looked at her. And I thought, maybe Helen Mar Kimball's story wasn't just about her. Maybe it was about this. About giving the next generation the tools to think for themselves, to ask questions, to demand truth. To not just accept what they're told. That's a good question, I said. I don't know the answer, but I'm glad you're asking. We got home around sunset, and there was a car in the driveway. Not Linda's, someone else's. We walked inside, and sitting in my living room were 3 men, in suits, white shirts, ties, the stake president, the bishop, and someone I didn't recognize, an older man, gray hair, kind eyes. Brother Peterson, the stake president said, standing up. Thank you for meeting with us. I didn't know we were meeting, I said. It's important. Can we talk? Emma looked at me. I nodded. Go upstairs, sweetheart. I'll handle this. She hesitated, then went. I heard her bedroom door close. I sat down across from them, waited. The stake president cleared his throat. Brother Peterson, we've received some concerning reports about your loss of faith, about things you've been teaching your daughter, and we need to discuss your membership status. My heart sank. I knew this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. What exactly are you asking? We're convening a disciplinary council for apostasy, for teaching false doctrine, for leading others away from the church. I haven't taught false doctrine. I've taught truth, from the church's own sources. You've interpreted those sources in a way that destroys faith, the bishop said. His voice was sad, like he didn't want to be here. You've taken your daughter down a path that will lead her away from eternal life, or I've given her the information she needs to make an informed choice. The church isn't about choice, Brother Peterson, the stake president said. His voice was harder now, less kind. It's about obedience. It's about faith. It's about trusting the Lord's anointed, and you've lost that trust. The older man, the one I didn't recognize, leaned forward. David, he said, his voice gentle, I'm President Mills. Area Authority 70. I'm here because I've seen this before, many times, and I want to help you. Help me how? Help you find your way back. Help you rebuild your faith. Help you save your marriage, your family, your eternal salvation. And if I don't want to come back? His expression shifted. Still kind, but with something else underneath. Pity, maybe. Or resignation. Then we'll have to take formal action. Excommunication. Removal of your name from the records. Separation from your family for eternity. You can't separate me from my family. I love them, that's real. That doesn't need a church seal to be true. But without that seal, President Mills said, you won't be with them in the celestial kingdom. Your children will be there, your wife will be there, and you'll be somewhere else. Forever. He let that sit. Let the weight of it crush down on me. And I felt it. The fear. The old programming. The terror of eternal separation. Of outer darkness. Of losing my family not just now, but forever. But then I thought about Helen Mar Kimball. About the fear they used on her. Your family's salvation depends on this. The same tactic. The same manipulation. The same control. And I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. President Mills, I said. Respectfully, I don't believe in the celestial kingdom anymore. I don't believe in outer darkness. I don't believe that God would separate families for eternity because someone asked questions. So your threat doesn't hold power over me. The room went silent. Finally, the stake president said, Then I think we're done here. The disciplinary council will be held next Sunday, 6 p.m. You're invited to attend and defend yourself. But based on what you've just said, I think we all know the outcome. They stood up, showed themselves out. And I sat there, alone in my living room processing what just happened. I was going to be excommunicated, officially cut off, my name removed, my sealing canceled. Everything I'd been my entire life, officially erased. And I felt relief, because the choice had been taken out of my hands. I didn't have to decide whether to leave. They were pushing me out. And that made it easier somehow. Emma came downstairs. What did they want? They're excommunicating me. Next Sunday. Her eyes went wide. Can they do that? Yeah, they can. Are you going to fight it? No. Why not? I looked at my daughter, 14 years old, standing in our living room, and I remembered Helen Mar Kimball again, 14 years old, standing in front of Joseph Smith, being given a choice that wasn't really a choice. Because I've already made my choice, I said, and it wasn't the church. Sunday came. Linda texted me that morning, I'm not coming to the council. I can't watch them do this to you. But know that I still love you, even if I can't be married to you anymore. I read it 3 times. I still love you. Present tense, not past. That meant something, maybe. Or maybe it meant goodbye. I didn't go to the disciplinary council, didn't defend myself, didn't plead for mercy. I just let it happen. Emma and I went hiking instead, up in the mountains, away from the church building, away from the men in suits making decisions about my eternal soul. We hiked until sunset, talked about everything and nothing, and by the time we got home it was over. I had an email. Subject: Notice of church discipline. I didn't open it. I knew what it said. Emma looked at me. Do you regret it? Any of it? I thought about that, really thought about it, about the last 8 days, about the research, about the conversations, about Linda leaving, about losing my calling, about being excommunicated, about everything. No, I said finally. I don't regret telling you the truth. I don't regret giving you a choice, even if it cost me everything. It didn't cost you everything, Emma said. You still have me. And she was right. I'd lost my marriage, my community, my identity, my church, my supposed eternal salvation. But I had my daughter. And more than that, I had my integrity. I had my authenticity. I had the ability to look at myself in the mirror and know I hadn't lied, hadn't betrayed what I knew to be true. And that was worth something. If you've ever been caught between protecting someone's faith and telling them the truth, you know how impossible that choice feels. What would you do? Let me know in the comments. 6 months passed. Linda filed for divorce. Not because she stopped loving me, but because she couldn't reconcile staying married to someone who'd lost the faith. The sealing was more important than the marriage. I understood, even if it broke my heart. Custody was split. Caleb and Sophie stayed with Linda most of the time. Emma stayed with me. We saw each other every other weekend, awkward, painful visits where we all tried to pretend everything was normal when nothing was normal. Sophie asked me once, "Daddy, why don't you go to church anymore?" And I told her the truth. Age-appropriate version. Because I learned some things about the church's history that made me realize it wasn't what I thought it was, and I couldn't pretend anymore. But if you don't go to church, will I see you in heaven? That question, the one designed to terrify kids into compliance, the one that breaks parents' hearts. Sophie, I said, I don't know if heaven is real, but I know this. I love you. Right now. Here. And nothing can change that. Not church, not beliefs, not anything. You're my daughter. Forever. No matter what. She thought about that, then said, "Okay," and went back to playing. And I realized maybe that was enough. Maybe real love, present, unconditional, honest love, was better than promises of eternal families built on obedience and fear. Emma thrived, started asking questions in seminary, got in trouble for it, eventually stopped going, started reading philosophy, started thinking for herself, started building a faith, or lack thereof, that was actually hers. She came to me one night about 8 months after everything fell apart and said, "Dad, I've been thinking about Helen Mar Kimball a lot. About how nobody gave her the truth. Nobody gave her a real choice. And I wanted to say thank you. For giving me that. For treating me like I deserved to know. Even when it was hard. Even when it cost you everything." I pulled her into a hug, held her while we both cried, and I thought, maybe this is what redemption looks like. Not eternal salvation, not heavenly reward, just this moment, this connection, this honesty. Maybe that's enough. A year after Emma's question, a year after Dad, did Joseph Smith really marry a 14-year-old? I sat in a coffee shop. My first real coffee. Not just breaking the word of wisdom, actually experiencing what I'd been told my whole life was evil. It tasted like freedom. Emma was across from me, drinking her own coffee. 15 now, taller, stronger, more sure of herself. "Dad," she said, "I've been thinking about cause and effect, about choices and consequences, and I realized something." "What's that?" "The church chose to hide the history, that was their choice. And the consequence was a generation of people like you, people who found out later and felt betrayed. You chose to ask questions, and the consequence was losing your marriage, your community, your church. But you also chose to tell me the truth, and the consequence was that I get to build my life on honesty instead of lies. Every choice has a consequence. We don't get to control what they are. We only get to control what we choose." I stared at my daughter, 15 years old, sitting in a coffee shop, articulating the law of cause and effect, one of the Hermetic principles, without even realizing it. "When did you get so philosophical?" I asked. She smiled. "When you gave me permission to think." We sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee, watching people walk by, living in the present instead of pining for eternity. And I thought, maybe Helen Mar Kimball's story didn't end with her. Maybe it continued, through time, through generations, through every person who chose truth over comfort, through every parent who gave their child information instead of indoctrination, through every 14-year-old girl who got to say no. Maybe that's the real restoration, not of the church, but of agency, of choice, of truth. You can't build a foundation on lies and expect it to hold when the truth shows up. That's what I've learned. Every action has a consequence. The church's choice to hide history created a generation of faith crises. My choice to ask questions cost me my community. My choice to be honest cost me my marriage. But it saved my integrity. It saved my relationship with my daughter. It saved my soul. Not in the eternal sense, but in the present one. The part of me that has to live with myself every day. Was it worth it? Ask me in 10 years. But I'll tell you this. I can finally look Emma in the eye. I can finally look at myself in the mirror. And that's something I couldn't do 3 days after her question. Sometimes the truth costs you everything, but the lie costs you yourself. And I'm done paying that price. I'm done protecting systems that don't protect people. I'm done choosing comfort over honesty. I'm done telling 14-year-olds to just have faith when what they really need is information. Helen Mar Kimball didn't get a choice. But Emma did, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the point. Maybe that's how we break the cycle. One honest conversation at a time. One difficult truth at a time. One 14-year-old girl at a time. We finished our coffee. Emma asked if we could go hiking again. Up in the mountains. Away from the temple, away from the church, away from all of it. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go." We walked out of the coffee shop together. Father and daughter. Not sealed for eternity. Not promised celestial kingdoms. Just together. Here. Now. Honest. And that was enough. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe. There are thousands more stories like David's. Untold, unheard, waiting to be shared. And if you've lived through something similar, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. When did you ask the question, what did you find? You're not alone. The sun was setting behind the mountains. The same mountains I'd grown up seeing every day. The same mountains that had watched generations of Mormon pioneers build their lives here. The same mountains that would be here long after all of us were gone. And I thought, maybe faith isn't about having all the answers. Maybe it's about being okay with the questions. Maybe it's about choosing truth even when it destroys you. Maybe it's about giving the next generation the tools to think for themselves. Maybe that's the real restoration. Not of a church, but of honesty, of integrity, of choice. Emma and I got in the car, drove up toward the mountains, and behind us the temple, white and gleaming and sure of itself, grew smaller in the rearview mirror. Eventually, it disappeared completely, and we kept driving.